Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Andre and I'm your bookworm, and we're finally back in Melbourne together with this gorgeous background and proper lighting and everything. So I'm very happy to be back. I'm trying to produce as much content as I can so we can go back to the normal schedule. Missed the last Thursday, but hopefully it's just that. And yeah, today's video won't be a wrap up because I read very little in the past month. I can just say that I read Salute the Dark by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I read Storm of Swords by George R. R. Martin, the third book in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I've also read, finally, I finished the first volume of The Lord of the Mysteries, which ended on chapter 213. So all of that is done. I actually started volume 2 and I'm trying to give those reviews as fast as I can. It will take some time, so bear with me, but for now we have another review. Oh, and I also read one volume of One Piece, if that's something. But yeah, today we're actually reviewing this book, which is The Rise of Kyoshi by FCE. For the ones that don't know, The Rise of Kyoshi is the first of 2 books. This is a duology, and also for the ones that are like, why is this name so familiar? Where do I remember Kyoshi? Kyoshi is one of the avatars in the Avatar The Last Airbender or Avatar The Legend of Korra series, which is 2 animated series with a few seasons, I think 4 each maybe, and all of them both are really good in different aspects, but they were quite famous as people still love them up to today. And this is one of the avatars from the Avatar The Last Airbender, and this is pretty much the story of how that avatar came to be. And because of that, it is a prequel. I hadn't heard much about this book until a friend of mine read it, and suddenly he was raving about it and recommending it to me a lot of times. So eventually I considered and I grabbed it and started reading it. This book was initially published in 2019. On Goodreads, it has over 36,000 ratings, and the average score it has is a 4.44 out of 5. So with these numbers, it tells us that we can expect good things, or at least the average person on Goodreads thinks so. Let's see. First, we have our housekeeping item. You know the drill. If you're new, I'm just going to narrate the synopsis so you can get a sense of what the story is about. If you don't want to hear anything at all because you avoid all types of spoilers, then just skip to the timestamp, the next one, and it will start into the review with our categories. But otherwise, stick around and you'll hear it for like a minute or less. FCE's The Rise of Kyoshi delves into the story of Kyoshi, the Earth Kingdom-born Avatar. The longest living avatar in this beloved world's history, Kyoshi established the brave and respected Kyoshi warriors, but also founded the secretive Dai Li, which led to the corruption, decline, and fall of her own nation. The first of 2 novels based on Kyoshi, The Rise of Kyoshi, maps her journey from a girl of humble origins to the merciless pursuer of justice, who is still feared and admired centuries after she became the Avatar. And that is it for Synopsis. Now let's jump into our categories, starting with plot. Like the synopsis says, we follow the origin and the story of Kyoshi, the Earthbound or Earth Kingdom Avatar. However, Kyoshi isn't the only POV we get. Sometimes we do have perspectives from other characters, but of course all of it still following this main plotline, which is seeing Kyoshi become who she is at the end. One of the things I'm going to mention throughout this review is kind of like a theme, is how my perception of the book itself changed as I was reading it. Initially, I thought it was going to be quite YA, especially because Avatar The Last Airbender was geared towards the younger audience, whereas Legend of Korra was geared towards a more adult one. And I thought Kyoshi might have been as well a younger audience, but I was quite mistaken. I think not only in the character category did the character's development took a very adult turn, which I'll speak when I speak about the character category, but also the themes themselves that were explored were also quite adult, and I did not expect to find them in this book. And another detail that geared me to think this was a YA book was that we start the story with Kyoshi as a child. And therefore I thought it was going to be more her growth, but in a more childish way, just like Aang is just a kid. He's probably 12 or something like that. And so we can't expect much adult topics in a child like that. However, again, I was fooled, and we do see Kyoshi grow a bit more past those years. And so because of that, the plot wasn't as adventurous or lighthearted as I thought it would be, which for me was good. I enjoyed that, but then again, I'd warn people to temper their expectations regarding what they'll expect from this book. If they expect it to be more like The Last Airbender, they might come a bit disappointed, where if they expect something like The Legend of Korra with more heavy topics, then that will be more accurate. And of course, the plot has a lot of twists and turns that a lot of them I did not expect or did not see coming whatsoever. And I think another thing the author did well was that even though we know Kyoshi from The Last Airbender, we know more or less where she ends. However, we don't know how she became to be that person. And this book does feed you all that information and that trajectory, while at the same time still feeling like a completely new adventure. And you know how prequels have the danger of feeling stakeless? Because we know exactly how they will end. However, FCE found a way that keeps the stakes still quite high, while not just endangering our main protagonist that we know won't die. And he does that by threatening all the other characters around Kyoshi, because we don't know what happens to them. We don't know if they failed or if they died whatsoever. So that keeps us with our stakes high, because we don't know how that will impact Kyoshi. And of course, I need to talk about that ending, which was so surprising. Definitely got me on the edge of my seat and wanting to read the next book right after. I won't reveal any of it, but just know that it was, for me, a very good ending. And for that, I'm going to give this category a 5 out of 5. Now moving on to characters. Like I mentioned before, I thought at the start of this book, this was going to be a very young adult novel with plenty of teenager emotions on the forefront of the story. But I was mistaken. Don't get me wrong, there were still some emotions. However, these weren't driving the plot forward. And I mean, that doesn't mean that there aren't emotions. There are. However, they are reasonable within the actions that happen, and they are never the focus itself of the story. Yes, sometimes Kyoshi does feel things and that she does decide to take action based on those feelings, but it never feels like they are overreactions. And they were all consistent with their development arc. And even all the other characters were very well characterized. They felt deep and multifaceted, from her partners to the villains. I feel like all of them had their own ambitions, their dreams, their fears. And I think what makes this book excellent in this category is how the villains are somewhat relatable. These villains are quite ambiguous, which I think make great villains, because part of you understands why they're doing what they're doing, even though they're doing it in the wrong way. I mean, they're not out to destroy the world or just kill everyone. And I think that's part of the beauty in the Avatar universe. A lot of the villains aren't just black and white. There's several shades of gray to make you question how bad is bad, or how some people want the right thing but they are going through it the wrong way. So all of this to say that this category is a 5 out of 5 for me. What about world building? This book has an advantage if you've seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is that the world is already built for you. You know the rules, you know how it works. Everything happens in places that you've seen or have a sense of what they look like. And because of that, there's not much that the author needs to explain. However, this also might come with a price for the new readers, the people that just jumped into this book without knowing much else of Avatar: The Last Airbender or Avatar the universe. But the fact is, this book uses The Last Airbender to do a lot of the heavy lifting in this category, which might be a weakness. There are still original parts. We get to explore the Earth Kingdom in a way that I don't think we explored in the same sense with both the animated series. And at the same time, we do build a world of the past before Avatar Aang came into the world. So we see a glimpse of the history of that world. And one thing that I enjoyed, and I think made quite a lot of sense, was how bending was explained in this book. Because we do know how it works if you've seen the animated series. However, in this case, Kyoshi uses her fans, and it is somewhat explained, but in this book it was further explained and a lot better. And this might be a bit of a spoiler, so you might want to skip like 1 minute or two. But the fact that Kyoshi cannot control her earthbending very well, she can do huge amounts of bending, or like bending big things, but she cannot be precise. And so she uses her fans to do that type of more precise bending. I think that was a very good detail that connected these points and it was well done. So I think FCE did a good job. So for me, this category is a 4 out of 5. Writing style is our next category, and I think this book explores a lot of themes, and very good themes while we're at it. I have an unpopular opinion, which is that I actually like The Legend of Korra more than The Last Airbender. I think The Last Airbender is amazing, don't get me wrong, but I do really like how The Legend of Korra explored very adult themes. I don't particularly like Korra itself. I think she can be quite annoying, but I did enjoy the themes explored in that second series. And I think this book is similar. Initially I didn't like Kyoshi that much, but I do think that themes explored in this book are quite good. And however, I can also forgive Kyoshi being an annoying character more than Korra, because I think the circumstances she had were different, and her annoyance kind of changed throughout the book. I don't want to reveal much, but I think it became less annoying because you could understand more where she was coming from. And I think how the way that this book uses not only Kyoshi, but all other characters to explore these themes and make them think about what is right and what is wrong was very well done. And it makes them think and make decisions based on what justice or morals or corruption, all these type of things, how they will judge them. And I don't think it is ever preachy. It doesn't tell you what is the right answer. It just makes you think. And I like that about it, is that maybe you think that the character made a bad decision, but you can also understand why they did what they did. And then, of course, regarding the prose, at the start, like I said, I did think the prose was leaning a bit towards the YA genre or subgenre, especially in the dialogues. I think some parts were a bit, I don't know, I would expect something more adult. Then again, these are children, most of the characters, so you can really expect them to have very adult dialogue unless you're reading something like Game of Thrones. And as for pacing, I thought it was good. The action scenes were all so delicious, especially with all the bending happening. I really wish I could see an animated series of this as well. And one thing that I really loved was that this book shows that you don't need a spectacular, bombastic ending to finish your book. You don't need a huge battle. There was some sort of battle, but it was a lot more tense and revealed a lot more of what was happening. And I thought that was quite well written and described. And for this category, it's going to be a 4, but I think it's a 4 that is very, very high, almost a 5. And finally, we have enjoyment. I enjoyed this book a lot more than I thought I would. Even though it was recommended by a friend, I was thinking that this book would be quite simple, adventurous, but fun, and yeah, not much to expect from it. But I'm glad I read it, because it turned out to be a book that made me think a lot and made me reflect on what was happening in the book. And as I was reading it, of course at the start I was like, oh, this feels a bit YA, but as I kept reading it, my interest got piqued, and from that point onward I was just reading as much as I could. And again, that ending was so good. It really wanted me to grab the next book right away, but unfortunately I didn't have it, and I have so many other books that I really couldn't just discard them and go grab the second one. But it is definitely on my list to read. Of course, I think this book had a small advantage because I do enjoy the Avatar universe, and so getting to dive again into it and explore is always fun for me. And of course, there's elemental bending. Who doesn't love that? Everyone wishes they could control one element or the other, so that gets brownie points. So for this category, it's going to be a 5 out of 5 for me. And so this ends our review. Just as a refresher, we have 5 for plot, 5 for character, 4 for world building, 4 for writing style, and 5 for enjoyment. And that gives us a score of 4.6 out of 5. I think this book contains a lot more than you expect. In all ways, plots, characters, themes. I think you will be pleasantly surprised, in my opinion. Don't expect this to be a mind-blowing book, but it will be a good one. And I think if you enjoy the Avatar universe, definitely go for this and read it, because you will enjoy it. Of course, my score is slightly higher than the Goodreads one, which was 4.44, but even taking that into account, the Goodreads score is quite high, so that shows that a lot of people that have read this book really enjoyed it. But let me know, have you read this book? Have you not? Comment down below which of the avatars is your favorite. Do you enjoy Kyoshi? Do you enjoy Aang, Korra? Which one? Or maybe none of these 3? Comment down below and let me know. And if you're new, don't forget, subscribe, like the content, and I'll be seeing you on Thursdays and Sundays, because the schedule is back to normal and we're back to producing more content. So stick around, and I'll see you next week. See ya!